Surrender is interacting with life at the highest level. Not quitting, not shutting it down. Surrender is aligning yourself with life rather than having your life align with what's outside of you. Surrender has a really important quality in manifesting. So there are 5 foundational principles that I teach to the manifestation process, and the second is surrender. So let's really talk about surrender, how you can bring it into your life. We hear a lot, go with the flow and be in flow and let go and detach from the outcome. But the tough part is really how. And so I want to talk to you about how you can surrender every moment. It's a practice. So just like meditation or anything you're learning that's new, it's absolutely a practice. It's not necessarily natural to me. So I've had this really heightened level of awareness that's allowed me to be in the present moment and surrender. And I promise you, you can do it. And I promise you it works. And when I'm in a space of surrender, everything is manifesting and aligning itself just as it should. My handbook for surrender is The Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And those 2 books and that author has guided my entire practice and learning of surrender, and then real life, of course. So I want to tap into, before we begin on the how-tos, I want to tap into times that you've been in surrender. And I want you to reconnect to a time in your life that you've had this peak life moment, that everything felt really easy, really effortless. You lost track of time. Time stood still. You're in this place of disbelief. It was so beautiful, immense feelings of gratitude. Sometimes it's in nature. Nature reconnects us to who we truly are. It might be a sunset. It might be being with someone that loves you unconditionally, being with a child, sometimes a pet. And then those moments that we feel like maybe there's stillness. It's a moment of perhaps watching in the night sky a shooting star. We can't make that happen. We witness it in the present moment, and we can't capture it. We can't replay it. And as much as we look at the stars in the sky and say, I want a shooting star, we can't make that happen. And so Michael Singer has really boils the whole thing down to his experience in really taking away the struggle of life. So the whole book is really, how do I align myself with the whole of life rather than letting life or making life have to align with me? Because again, when we have those who's, what's, where's, when's, and why's that we want, then we're trying to make them align with our lives rather than watching the unfolding. So here are the steps that I use, and I use an acronym personally for when I want to step into a space of surrender. And that acronym is CCU. So it's not the cardiac care unit, although sometimes I think that it definitely is going to shut down fight or flight. It's going to put you into a rest and relaxation response for sure. And we know when we do that, we come to our life in situations with much more present moment awareness. So the first C is to notice the constriction. So any time you are not going with the whole of life, notice it instantly. And so it doesn't have to be the big things. You can start with some of the small things, some of the things that you're really annoyed with someone. You're annoyed with what someone said. And that constriction means that they said something that violated or went against something that you wanted. And so when you notice that constriction for the first time, just breathe into that. And the second C is to be curious. And really be curious about why you are constricting, why you're shutting down. So what happens when we constrict is we can't have that free flow of energy. Michael Singer talks a lot about our energy body, that we are this pure, endless energy, this pure flow. But the second that we put something in that blocks it, the first time we go into fight or flight and we have pieces of stress that start accumulating in the body. Every time that accumulates and that adds up and adds up, we can't let an experience of life flow through us. So that constriction means that something's not flowing all the way through you. That natural state of endless energy is your natural state. We just got so stressed. Of course, you've heard me say this a lot, that it keeps covering up that natural flow of energy. And of course, meditation is the most amazing way to take that accumulated stress from the past and begin to release it. So in day-to-day experiences, when you're faced with the challenges of life and we want to come up against something that we feel constricted, we're able to flow through it more readily. So when you feel constriction, you want to be very curious about it. And the U is the unfolding of life. And watch it unfold. Watch everything happen step after step after step. Because when you think about it, life has been unfolding up until this point in time. You're watching this video, and I made this video before you needed it, before you watched it, before you did a search and you found this video. This was done. And so your life was unfolding as my life was unfolding, and then us being together in this space and time has now collided. And I may say something that you appreciate, and I may say something that you don't agree with. And in that moment, if you don't agree with something, you might feel constriction. But it's not necessarily in just that moment. The whole of life has been happening. So you have a moment to be curious. What is that constriction about? So something from the past is now planted in the body. There's a piece of stress, or there's something that didn't flow through you from before, that perhaps something I said activated that, or it inflamed it. Maybe you can imagine if you have a cut that's starting to heal, and then all of a sudden you get salt water on that cut, right? It's going to burn, it's going to inflame it. And so what's happening in the moment isn't really where all the constriction and struggle is coming from. That's been happening long before. So if you can watch the experiences unfold with curiosity, you'll start to melt those past experiences and let the present ones come through you. A great example of this is being in the airport. And I think we've all been in the airport. It's such a high stress space when people aren't on their flights and aren't getting where they need to go, and they had a past of where they were and where they're going. And so it's a very stressful situation. I think a lot of us feel really vulnerable. We are there at the mercy of everyone else. The plane, the pilots, the flight attendants, everyone who's on the plane. Whatever happens, we are in a state of having to trust and surrender that when the plane gets in, when it's been checked for its safety evaluation, when the flight crew goes on, and when all of the flight, the people like you and me are on the plane, our baggage is in, and then we can finally take off. But what happens when something happens? Maybe even the plane breaks down, or weather, right? And so when that happens, you've seen people just break down. It's because now all of a sudden, all of those experiences of life, we're not fitting into them. And if we can use CCU, notice the constriction, be curious, and let the next moment unfold, it's going to unfold much more graciously, because there is nothing you can do. And the stress and compression is just going to compress and impact that even more. And so imagine the difference of someone who breathes and moves through that. You know, there's this video online of a woman that's just throwing this crazy tantrum. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on for minutes, where this grown woman is kicking and screaming in the airport. And she's speaking in another language, so I can't understand what she's saying. But she traveled down that path of pushing against whatever the situation was, instead of being curious and watching the unfolding, because what will unfold is the right solution. And I've been in the airport, I've been stuck in Chicago, stuck in snow. I think they rerouted me into a flight that was going to be 3 or 4 hours later. I didn't have anything that I had to get home to, so it wasn't a real high level of stress. But Chicago O'Hare is known for getting backed up a little bit. And so as I was walking to the new gate of my new flight, I looked over and I noticed, I was living in Orange County in California at the time, and I noticed And it said John Wayne instead of Orange County. And usually that's Orange County is what it will say for the destination, but John Wayne is the airport. And nobody was there in that gate where they were waiting. And I went up and asked them if where that plane was going, and the plane was empty, and they put me on, and I got home almost 2 or 3 hours earlier. So magic happens when we're in flow and when we surrender. The exact time and place of that airplane and the next step is not predetermined. Because right now in this moment and the next moment, anything can happen. Infinite possibilities. And so when you become curious and you watch the unfolding of the event, you allow the universe to conspire in your favor and bring about the most magical and amazing experiences. So not only are you shutting down the stress response, but you are also allowing magic to unfold. And then a lot of times in those stories where like the most difficult or the biggest obstacles have faced themselves in my life, and I was really upset or sad or frustrated or really like anxious about it happening, when I look back, every piece unfolded as it was meant to unfold, and I can see the beauty of how it led me to a place that I never would have been. But I can only see that after. And with so many times I've learned to really trust the process now, and so now when it is really difficult, I can take a deep breath, notice the constriction, can be really curious and say to myself internally, oh, and I also know that in those really difficult times, beautiful things have happened, and so I can trust the process just a little bit more. So the key to surrender is to always stay open. And that's what Michael Singer teaches in The Untethered Soul. If you are always open, then you don't block any experiences of coming through you. And the next step of how he says to always stay open, because that sounds really great in theory, but in practicality, what do? Don't close. And it's really easy to shut down. It's really easy if my feelings are hurt to just separate myself and take myself away from some sort of situation or some relationship. But if I can be in the whole of it and just be and let it flow through me without forcing myself to feel better, without forcing myself to push someone away or push someone out or building up a wall to keep me safe, when I stop protecting myself, all of a sudden the barriers come down and I'm able to move through it much more quickly. And if I think about all the times that I put up those walls and I put up those barriers and I really tried to keep myself safe out of a place of fear, out of a place that I don't want that to happen again because this is what happened in the past. And if I act the same way, then I will have that pain. So I'm just going to put up a block right now so these bad things in the past that happened to me don't happen to me again. When I have constricted like that in the past, I've looked back, and I want you to think about a time in your life that when you shut down because you were afraid or you were protecting or you were constricting, did you have long-term happiness? So did something good for the long term happen? And I can't think of one time in my life that closing down made something happen for the whole benefit of my life going forward. It basically just held me back. Eventually, I melt a little bit and I expand. But that constriction, when I keep it tight, will just get worse and worse. But it does have a beginning and it does have an end. So if you know that, then do your best not to close. Be convinced that there is nothing that is going to benefit you from closing. We think we're protecting ourselves and we're aligning life to us. But in fact, if we can just let go and just notice what's uncomfortable, so it doesn't mean accepting someone treating us really badly. It doesn't mean tolerating something that's difficult. It means in the moment, noticing that, having curiosity, and watching the unfolding of the next moment instead of forcing a new action. And then that activity of surrendering comes after the compression or the constriction or the difficult situation comes up. So then we can say, wow, I really need to guide my life in a new direction. And we can start to move in that direction in a really expansive and loving way to create what we want instead of a fear-based, instead of a running away from. We can expand toward. So to recap, surrender is the highest way to live your life, to align your life with the whole of what's going on around you rather than expecting everything else, which we have very little control of, to align with us, which causes that suffering. And when you think about that, there's a very simple tip you can use, CCU, to notice anytime you feel constriction, anytime you feel uncomfortable, anytime you want something that's different, notice what's constricting you. Be really curious about that. And then watch everything unfold. Watch the next step unfold and the next step unfold, being in the present moment, because that constriction is in the past or the future. And when you do that, you can always stay open and let this endless energy flow through you and be in a state of flow where all the creativity, all the joy, all the bliss, all the compassion, everything is in that state of flow. That constriction are all the negative qualities that we see so often in the world, the protection, the fighting, the anger, the fear, anxiety, depression. That's all in that constricted space. And so know a time in the past that you may have been in that constricted space and you may have had the decision, I want to close. Has it led you to long-term beauty in your life? Has that closing down ever led to greater joy, lasting happiness, or fulfillment in your life? I think most of us will say no, that it hasn't. So really make that commitment to promise yourself that even though it feels good to close down right now, and even though I want to constrict to protect this little piece of me, I know that in the end, I'm going to move with the whole of life and expansion if I stay open, if I notice, if I'm curious, and if I watch the unfolding. So I urge you to share your tips of surrender, your experiences here in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel and you'll receive notifications. Turn on the notification bell. You'll receive notifications of new videos, of manifestation, of guided meditations, mindfulness tips. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time.